Rule 303 here. I wanted to do a little video today, less a review and more a retrospect, I suppose, on something that was part of my childhood, very definitely, and may have well been part of yours too. Does anybody remember Battle Comic, which was around in the 70s and 80s, read by many a small boy, myself included? One of the key stories in the Battle comic, I mean, there were several that were kind of standout stories, but one of them was called Charley's War. And this story really ignited my interest in World War One and military history in general. So I was lucky enough a few years back to be able to get hold of some of the reissued Charley's War books from Titan Publishing, Titan Books. And the one thing that I remember so vividly about these books was the artwork. The level of detail in the artwork was just absolutely amazing. And this was in the times before any kind of computer-aided printing design or anything like that. These were all hand produced by a guy called Joe Calcuran, who's an Italian artist. And he did, on average, I think it was about 3 pages of illustrations a week, which was less than they wanted him to do, but he was just so exquisite in terms of his artwork that's what he produced. And Joe did work, lots and lots of work for Battle. He also did work for 2000 AD. But some of the ways that he portrayed World War One in the trenches were just absolutely amazing, astounding stuff. The level of detail is just unbelievable and quite heartrending, really. When you actually look and you reread some of these stories, they are, well, they wouldn't be particularly seen as being appropriate for today's small child audience. I have my own thoughts on that personally. I'm not going to get into that because this isn't a political video. But it didn't do me any harm whatsoever, and actually it really, I think, helped me in terms of my interests in World War One. It gave me a point of reference, really. Now, not everything in Charley's War is accurate to history, but then it's not going to be. It's a bloody comic, for God's sake. But it is accurate enough to be able to ignite a real interest. Now, these comics went on for quite a while. They went on for several years, Charley's War, and there were many kind of sub-stories in Charley's War around people that Charley met, his relatives and friends, and so on and so forth. It really did sort of, it became quite an in-depth story, really, with many subplots, and it was really just a very, very well thought out and very, very profoundly anti-war in many ways, and quite an interesting indictment of class. I mean, I wouldn't say that it was particularly forgiving towards the upper classes, but it certainly demonstrated the class divide, and some of the attention to detail around things like the first day of the Battle of the Somme were actually really quite difficult to read, quite difficult to look at. They are profoundly detailed pictures that Joe Calcuran has written, and the storyline was written by a guy called Pat Mills, who is just legendary in comics. And Pat's work stands out as being some of the best comic strip writing that there ever has really been in many ways. But as you can see, the artwork here is utterly devastatingly good, heartbreaking in terms of its violence and poignancy. It's amazing stuff. have to say, it holds up well. You know, even now, many, many years later, it holds up. I read this stuff when I was, gosh, probably, I don't know, maybe about seven or eight. And then going into, you know, it actually did a cycle. It came around twice in battle. It finished in World War II, where Charley goes into war to try and find his son who's gone missing, and it kind of finishes at Dunkirk, and then recycles itself with Charley's memories of World War One, and it kind of goes back to the start again. Yeah, there's divided opinions on how good the World War II stories were, but they certainly form part of the saga. But the reissues are 10 books by Titan Books. There are some even more recent reissues. The Titan Books ones probably go back about 15 years. But it's just wonderful to see that these old comics are still available to be read, because they really are absolutely amazing. So anybody that gets the chance to read Charley's War, and they haven't, and they're interested in, or even if they're not interested in World War One, give it a go, because I look at the attention to detail on the Lee Enfield. You know, I mean, Joe Corcoran wasn't a soldier, he was just a guy, he was an artist. But the level of detail there is just amazing. The level of detail of the Mark I Brodie helmet that Ginger's wearing in this scene here, where he's arguing with Charley, is just unbelievable. You know, it really is so well researched and so well written and illustrated. Charley's War holds a bit of its own, I don't know, its own distinction in comic history, really. It was released at a time when there were still World War I veterans alive, just about, and World War I was still in living memory. It's not anymore, it's 2022 now, and we lost the last, well, in Britain we lost the last World War I veteran, a guy called Harry Patch. I think we lost him about 10 years ago. But, you know, this really is just a testimony to the war. It's an amazingly visual way of actually remembering what happened in some detail, really. And I would recommend anybody to read this. I mean, read it as whatever you do, read it as a work of fiction. You know, don't read it thinking that this is going to be super accurate, but, you know, as a work of fiction, you know, it's absolutely unbeatable. So, yeah, this is my little retrospect of Charley's War. If you get your hands on a copy, do. It's well worth it, because I can't think of a way of getting somebody more interested in the war, the First World War, than this. It worked for me when I was 7 or 8 years old, and I'm 48 now, and I'm still as passionate about the First World War as I was then. So 40 years later, I'm still reading Charley's War. Thanks very much for watching the video. If you made it this far, please hit the like button and subscribe. Thank you.